saw an opportunity where we could have these conversations about mental health and hopefully save lives one day. I had no idea this is what it would turn into 3 years later. And it has been a dream come true finding this new purpose. The Mental Games and Mental Health podcast, where I interview athletes, celebrities, musicians, influencers, actors, just to try to help someone that might be listening.
Welcome to Engage Presents. I'm Engage co-founder and president Jake Olson. In this interview series, I ask Engage talent the most common questions we hear from event planners to help you get to know them and their stories in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for listening. Welcome to another episode of Engage Presents. I am Engage president Jake Olson. Alongside me today, Brandon Saho, a mental health and suicide prevention speaker and host of the Mental Game, a popular mental health podcast with over 3 million downloads. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jake. I'm excited for this conversation.
So, Brandon, you used to be a sports reporter, which I'm familiar with those types of folks, but now you interview people from the sports world, athletes. Why don't you share with us who's your favorite, athlete or team, or who do you follow? What sports do you follow?
So for me, I grew up in Cincinnati, which if you're a sports fan, can be very depressing. So when you talk about mental health, it definitely taught me about it early on. But yeah, so I grew up loving the University of Cincinnati, grew up in the Kenyon Martin, Bob Huggins era of college basketball. So that's where my fandom started, but then had a love for the Reds, the Bengals, and it's just been something that has stuck with me. I knew I would never probably be on the court or on the field, so I thought sports reporting can be the next best thing. And so getting to report on some of my favorite teams at my last job in TV was really a dream come true for me. But yeah, huge sports fan. I told you before we started rolling, I was a fan of you too and know your story well. So yeah, I really appreciate working together on this.
So your podcast, The Mental Game, you've interviewed some really cool people, Terry Crews, Dan Hurley, Kevin Gates. For someone who hasn't ever heard the podcast, kind of explain to us what it is and what you talk about.
Well, for me, it's personal. Being a sports reporter and struggling on my own. I just mentioned the Super Bowl. The Bengals were in the Super Bowl. It's my hometown team, and it's a dream come true for me to be on the sidelines during that season. But no one knew that I was struggling on my own behind the scenes in silence with suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety, alcoholism. And so once I hit that rock bottom and I finally asked for help myself, I realized that there's so many people that struggle with this and don't say anything. And that includes the sports world where we were taught growing up to rub dirt on it. Don't share your feelings, especially being a man. If you share your feelings, you're weak. You can't be emotional. You have to just play hurt and go through it. And so for me, I saw an opportunity where we could have these conversations about mental health and hopefully save lives one day. I had no idea this is what it would turn into 3 years later. And it has been a dream come true finding this new purpose. The Mental Games and Mental Health podcast, where I interview athletes, celebrities, musicians, influencers, actors, just to try to help someone that might be listening. They might be a huge fan of Terry Crews in White Chicks or watching America's Got Talent, but they never thought about their mental health before. And then they see him talking about his struggles with addiction and going to therapy and being suicidal. And they're like, wait, wait, wait. If this big bad superstar can ask for help and the guy that I love and idolize that I think has no problems in the world, then I can ask for help too. And so that's been the really cool thing, Jake, is just being able to connect the dots that way because someone might not know who I am. And that's completely fine. I don't care, not an ego shot at all. But if I can have their favorite NFL player or movie star or singer on, and that helps them go to therapy for the first time, or maybe talk to their son or daughter about how they're feeling and their mental health, that's the whole goal of the podcast is to save lives that way.
And that's really awesome that you do that because you're exactly right. And, to your point, people can listen to the mental health journeys of your guests and draw from that. But we are talking about you today. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your mental health journey, I know you kind of gave a little tidbit there, but can you walk us through just what that looked like?
Yeah, I didn't talk about mental health at all growing up. My first suicidal thought came at 14 years old. And, as of now, the last one was 2 years ago. And I never thought that it'd be something that I'd be battling in silence for 15 years. And I think that's what motivates me every single day about doing the mental game, speaking, meeting people, having those one-on-one conversations, responding to emails and DMs because you never know whose life you could touch. And I didn't have that. And so if I can help anyone, I love to do so. But yeah, for me, man, it's crazy. I was in the generation where cell phones just came out, and I'll never forget like an embarrassing photo getting sent around to me at a football game
Mm.
and just going home that night and feeling depressed and alone and sad and thought I was never going to get through that moment of embarrassment. And that feeling of suicide that I didn't know what it was, that feeling of being alone came and went through college, through young professional life. When you work in TV and sports, you're moving all over the country, you work nights and weekends. And I just got to this point in my life where at 28, I was on the field reporting on my favorite team as they were going to the Super Bowl. But off the field, I was at the biggest rock bottom where I was suicidal every second of every day for 3 months. I lost three family members, including my cousin Ben, who's basically my older brother. I had all this pressure on me at work, and the big thing for me was I always felt alone and dreamed of that picture perfect wife, relationship, and family, and thought I finally found that. And unfortunately, my ex girlfriend and I at the time were going through a really, really toxic, tough breakup. And so all this together,
Mm.
I had no choice but to ask for help, or else I wouldn't be here because I didn't want to live anymore. And so I asked, myself, what can I do? And I eventually went to my mom and dad and told them exactly what I was going through. And that was the first time they had heard of it. And that's when I really took that first step to ask for help. And I'll never forget, my mom being super supportive and my dad giving the classic male answer that we fear as young men: toughen up, be a man, figure it out. When I told him that I wanted to take my own life, that shocked me.
Mm.
I was so traumatized in that moment, but I always share that whenever I tell my story because if people truly love and care about you, they will help you. They might not understand at first, they might say the wrong thing at first. My dad said the absolute worst thing you can say to your child, but if they love and care about you, they will help you. And within an hour, my dad called me back and wanted to help me and my mom find out how I could get help. And so next day, call my therapist and I check into a hospital for mental health in Cincinnati. And that was the start of my journey of healing for the first time ever in my life.
We very much appreciate you talking and sharing your story. You get to travel the country and share that. You have your trademark mental game program that you get to share with companies and high schools and um, everything alike. So, kind of walk us through that structure of your mental game program.
Yeah, the mental game program is something that is my favorite thing that I do. I know that sounds crazy to people watching, or maybe you. I get to sit down with some of the most famous people in the world, but this is my favorite thing that I do because I get to see it work in person, being able to help people and literally save lives. And so for me, I share my story in a very engaging and interactive way, and talk about mental health in a way that really hasn't been done before. We kick it off with just this kind of short video that shares my story and also shares the podcast. So you see Terry Crews or your favorite NFL player or Meredith, played by Kate Flannery in The Office, in their scenes in movies or running, into the end zone for a touchdown. Then they're sitting down with me talking about therapy and suicide and anxiety. And so we really set the bar there so that it is a safe space that we can talk about how we're feeling and what's going on. And so I share my story, share some of the biggest things I've learned from the podcast, but also make it a safe space to be vulnerable and make it interactive where we do a live Q&A. We do a large group discussion and a big activity to get people looking around the room and being vulnerable in ways that maybe they never have before. I'll tell you this, Jake, the high schools are so special. I love
Mm.
doing that and getting to meet so many kids and teachers and people that really maybe not talked about it before, in this big way, but also like when you get up to those levels of the college and corporate settings too, sometimes you have the most magical conversations because it's people our age. I've been really blessed to be able to, speak at LSU in an arena in front of thousands of people and partner with, Joe Burrow and his family and be able to break the stigma there. We've worked with Ohio State, Arkansas, Dayton, Cincinnati, West Virginia. It's just been really, really cool to see these big platforms and have these people open up in different ways. And my favorite thing, honestly, is in these corporate settings when I'm meeting with a management group or maybe 100 employees and we're sitting there telling my story, talking. I always open up to Q&A, but then it turns into them just being vulnerable to me. This usually happens one-on-one afterwards. Every single time I'll stay and talk for an hour, hour and a half, as long as I can, meet and greet, pictures, whatever. But in the corporate setting, every single time it turns into, hey, I struggle with this too. Hey, I went through this when I was a kid. Hey, my daughter struggles with this. And these are things that people have never told their coworkers before.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden it brings us all together because it's that safe space that we created. And one more thing about the program that's really important, I'm not a therapist myself, but we partner and work with some of the best mental health professionals out there. I'm from Cincinnati, so we developed our program with the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, but we also work with some amazing, companies and youth therapists that really helped us make sure that we're not saying the wrong thing and we're saying the right thing when it comes to coping mechanisms, things that I went through in my story to help other people, the questions that we ask, the environment to create a safe space and really make it okay to talk about how you're feeling. Because the last thing we want to do is trigger anyone and make it worse. We want to make it better. So we've just made sure that we keep it as positive and as good as possible when it comes to following the best mental health practices. Because again, we want to help everyone the best we can and save lives.
Very powerful, very powerful. And to that point, you have a personal goal this year of speaking to at least 150,000 people in all 50 states. How's that going, one? But also, right now, again, we're kind of first quarter, end of first quarter of 2025. What's the smallest and biggest city you visited?
Okay, so I'm going to answer this in a bunch of different parts. Last year, I went to 30 states in 30 days, driving myself around the country in my Jeep. Don't suggest that, but it was really cool because I got to see and meet people and create this community that I didn't know I was missing out on. And so this year, a little bit slower pace to start off. We're not doing 30 states in 30 days. I want to say I got at least five or six now down, but I'm flying out tomorrow morning where we'll take on New York, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Florida at the end of the week, and then back to California. So for me, that's my favorite thing that I get to do, like I said. But yeah, we were able to hit over 100,000 people last year in I think 38 states. So my goal is to get to all 50 this year. And some of my favorite cities or things or maybe places that I wouldn't think of in the beginning. Then once I went there and experienced the people like Maine. Maine is a beautiful place of the country, and we got snowed in while I was on tour for 3 days. We were at a husky like kind of retreat, and so we were able to like hang out with huskies in the snow for 2 or 3 days and have lobster rolls. It was awesome. But then I've had some really really cool moments in other parts of the country. I remember Arkansas, being in a small kind of community center and having a really, really impactful conversation about mental health in the Black community as a white guy, leading that conversation and getting asked about that because I have so many, Black athletes, musicians, celebrities on my show. And so moments like that, I just, I find really, really special because it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, what you do, or who you are. If you have a certain energy about you, and so does that crowd, it just creates a safe space like nothing I've ever seen before.
So just lastly, just for people listening, you being on the other side of things now, and I know it's obviously a constant thing you deal with, and it's a struggle. So not to say you're completely free, whatever, but on the other side of things from where you were, just words of encouragement for anyone who is in that dark place right now and looking to get on the other side.
I'll say if you're in that dark place, please remember two things. They're my biggest two things. Number one, do something. Like we talked about earlier, you have to ask for help. You have to get it off your chest. You can't do it alone. You have to do something about it. But number two is the biggest thing for me, and that's feelings are temporary. Nothing's the end of the world. Those feelings aren't facts. I don't even recognize that person that I used to be when I was at my rock bottom, when I was in that dark place, like somebody that's maybe listening right now. It's crazy to look back on that version of myself. But for the first time ever, I love myself. I love my life. And it's because I put in that work and went to therapy and tried to make myself better for the first time ever. And so I think my advice would be please do those two things, do something, know that those feelings are temporary, and don't be afraid to ask for help because you can be just like me. I was just like you. You just have to ask for that help and want to make that change. That would be my biggest advice. And once you get there, I mean, it's like going to the gym. Once you see yourself getting in better shape, you just want to keep on living like that. And that's exactly how I feel about my mental health.
Well, thank you, Brandon, for sharing that again, for doing what you do, for bringing hope and light to people who are in those dark places. And we just are honored to be able to help you share that message, that powerful message. So if you want to book Brandon, visit letsengage.com. He's available. Check out his profile, check out his podcast. And again, hopefully, Brandon can come share that powerful message with you soon. So, again, thank you, Brandon, for joining us today.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it. Love y'all.
Stay tuned for more Engage Presents.